So low-key forgot to record the walk while we were supposed to go to the destination, but hey, we're here. Um, I like walking around this neighborhood because it's not that it's pretty calm. You might get barked at a dog here or there, but anything else is it's pretty good. A BMW for 9 grand? They must have killed somebody in here. But yeah, um, it's pretty nice in the neighborhood actually. I had to take one glove off so I can like touch the screen because like these junks are just not working for some reason. But anyway, let's get to uh, so what I was gonna brief you on was not the eye of the beholder, but how seeing something of any nature could not warp but also manipulate your mind into thinking something totally different just by seeing it. Saying a factual statement and then seeing something that's totally opposite from that statement tends to be not invigorating but more of an irritation of the mind. And I wish I could explain it way better than what I am now because I had a sentence in mind to put down when I was talking about this, right? So you can get fed a bunch of statistics that don't relate to the matter at hand, but long as it sounds like it's correlating, it could so-called feed your argument. And I think the reason it is that because nobody really so-called does research. The so-called research they do is a couple Google searches here and there, and then they just call it quits. They be like, a quick Google search would prove this is obsolete. And I'm like, you gotta go deeper than that because you can Google search anything and Google will say it's correct. Or it will further your statement even longer. But with that, I don't want this to be the main topic of this video because we're just supposed to be walking and chilling. But I think the reason why I'm so called sad at the moment. Oh my god, this is a great view. I wish I could flip the screen, but if you can see it, it looks so tough. I don't know. Can you see the moon? That bit looks so tough. But yeah, there you go. I had to zoom out because, well, my head look big as hell. But yeah, with that, I also, you know, in the media tends to, I guess, either lie or film. What is it called? Is it fearmonger? They'll tell you things that are completely scary, but they'll try to, dabble up a little to put fear in your heart. But don't get me wrong. Oh my God, there's so much carnage in the world right now as we speak. But there's been carnage in the world since the beginning of time. It's just that we have been more aware to it because of the technology that we hold has been shining light to it. Even with that, it's crazy to say, but I think we have been desensitized to mass genocide and violence. And I'm not finna come on here and virtual signal because I don't have all the details. So who am I to tell you what is right or wrong when I don't know the full concept of it? But I will be right back because I gotta take a photo of this moon. It's gonna be for the video, so this will be cut and then we'll cut right back. All right, I promise. The quick intermission. It was less than like 5 seconds, yeah. But with the conversation at hand, I'm, you know, you can feel empathy for a lot of things: death, violence, stealing. But you may feel an effect to it to some degree. But how can you change anything if you have no power? And the only power you have is to collect as a masses to vote on a one individual to so-called make a change. Don't get me wrong. I'd rather be the person that can make change for you than lie to you and say I'll change without doing anything. Because without a so-called leader, it leads to chaos. But sometimes chaos is needed to be reconstructed. Now, is that a crazy way to think? Yes, but also you have to grasp this concept for me. I will never try to undermine you or speak down upon you or treat you or belittle you. I see us as all equals. So when I talk to you, I want to talk not with just urgency, but with sternness. Because anybody can get on internet and just yell at you. Because yes, I do feel passion for the things I say, but also I have to come with terms that I won't be seen as a serious figurehead in any type of category if I'm only stuck on the platform, right? In my eyes, both sides are wrong. And the book that I wrote when I was younger, the one main objective for my younger self was not to change my vision or my ideology due to a maturing concept. Because I was studying puberty because I did not know what was going on in my body. Did not know why these emotions were so-called overwhelming at the time. Because, you know, I don't want to put this in here, but so-called as a black man, your emotions are not so-called validated as it is now. Mental health was not so-called validated as it is now. So, not even back then, but I did not speak upon it mainly because I did not feel voiceless. Don't get me wrong, my biological father and my biological mother gave me a voice to some instances, and I appreciate that so I can be an opinionated individual. But as I see this world has been fully torn into a place where it cannot be put back together. So so-called this full rehabilitation, bro, this full form of rehabilitation is like trying to be rehabilitated is not a greatest thing. And right, I was looking at the book that my younger self wrote, and I wouldn't call my younger self a elitist, but the the only thing that when I was reading this book he wrote, this so-called journal, he said a factory reset on the world would be the only greatest thing. I'm like, I'm reading this. I'm like, what the like what? I felt like when I was reading, I was like, damn, was my younger self indoctrinated to feel like mass genocide was only okay if it was to heal the world? And I was like, that's a crazy thing. No, no, but at the time he saw all humans. That's why I think that's why I so-called say I'm not human, right? I am not. I see ourselves as all equals, but I don't see myself as a human because humans can have mistakes and be rehabilitated for those mistakes and apologize for those mistakes but still repeat it. So when I was reading this book, I was like, dang. I was like, I don't. Yeah, I might take some considerations of the things I used to say when I was younger, but I was like, at that time, my mind was still fully developing, so I just didn't see it as so. Now, does that correlate to the things I was talking about? Probably not. But I don't take everything. I don't take everything that my younger self said to consideration, mainly because I wouldn't say I was young and dumb, but some of the words that I were using didn't seem applicable at that time. Like at that time, when I was writing that book when I was younger, I felt like this was the best course of action to so-called saving the world, right? But now that I'm older, I don't think it was maturing. I don't think it was realizing I don't think it's seeing the error of my ways. I think it was more of the fact that I feel like if I went the direction of my younger self went, I would have been villainized on the wrong side. Even though both sides are equally wrong, but you can't say one side's worse than the other because, oh, well, I'm on this side because I agree with the things they say more than that side. If you're doing that, well, by that logic, you can agree with the most malicious people if they have the same ideology in the same terms as you, right? Or if that, you can have a simplistic outview on every dictator in every way, because as we go, we read the history, and then we don't know what has been not marginalized, but we don't know what has been decrypted or tarnished or changed in a way to make so-called great America, or just any country at that, in a better limelight, right? Because I was reading a book, I don't remember what it was called, but it wasn't an autobiography, or was it a biography? It couldn't be, but it was a book about Adolf Hitler, right? And I feel like everything, when it comes to that man, right, that individual that was demonic in mainly all his instances, I feel like each malicious person had a so-called reason to the things they did the way they did, right? But even with that, I read more and more into it. It's either people study that individual so much to the point they agree with him, they agree with him fully, or they disagree with him completely. And the bad outweighs the good, so you can't agree with a person that out. Understandment than agreement can be forsaken, right? But hold on, don't look at me like, oh, you support Adolf Hitler. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I feel like I have a cognitive response to figure out why the things he done. Because you got to think, you can get eliminated from this world by your beliefs, good or bad. Don't mean because you didn't pull the trigger, you still caused that effect, right? As I said, these world leaders, may not have pulled the trigger, but they called the hit, you know? That's what I truly think, honestly. You can change my mind, but even with that, I see otherwise. I see a man that he tried to do the so-called correct thing for his country, but in a complete wrong way, to the point where he almost did a mass genocide of one demographic. If you have to kill one demographic on a sacrificial level, any of your ideologies are thrown away, no matter how good or bad. Because I think nobody truly does a study for it. They just assume, even if they do study that individual, they be like, oh, well, he did it for the right reasons. He killed many of Jews for the right reasons. I'm like, even with that, people will tend to be like, well, here in this section, Jews were allowed to leave, but some stayed and some were able to leave the concentration camps. They will use that as their main talking point. people will use a good part or a semi-moral high ground of a statement that a malicious or evil person has done and be like, well, they did this one good thing, so you can't tarnish them for everything. And then they'll also be like, well, this and these demographic of people killed another demographic of people, so he's just doing the same thing. Now, once again, if you break everything down in a child's aspect, you think because an individual would hit you because you hit somebody they know and you hit them back, is that fair? Everything is supposed to be correlating with fairness. And I think, I'm like, when I see people agree with that, with Adolf Hitler in some instances of his ideologies, I'm like, I don't know. Or you gotta think, if you break it down, you erased all races, all demographics, you can just say that individual killed a mass group of individuals for not only for power, knowledge, and land. He did it to so-called protect his country. That's not a so-called correct way of going about it. With me, I think the reason I hate my mind so much because I won't play devil's advocate. It's just that I understand why our individual is so shitty. And then I won't agree. I will understand them so I could never be mad. But even with that, you still can't hold hate for everybody. Right? But holding hate only shows that they have power over you. But I hate that. I hate that statement mainly because if you think about this, if a rapist goes free and you hold hatred because of that man went free, is that man so-called controlling you, or is that woman or that individual themselves holding power over you mainly because you're not corrupted but mad at them for taking advantage of another individual? No, they hold no power over you. You have every right to be angry at them because there's no coming back from that. That is a devilish thing. So when I see people trying to play devil's advocate for a man with his ideologies that almost created almost a extinction level of one demographic, I tend to see it as it makes no sense. It makes no sense. You can't agree. You can't agree with that person. You can say a life for a life, but if one individual takes more life than given, how do we hold them to a standard? People tend to make jokes on that character. Like, oh, he was a great painter, or he was a semi-okay painter, but he got rejected from a paint school, so he went into politics. So they make these crazy things to excuse the most demonic things he have done. And I just don't understand that. But we're getting off topic, right? But I do see people of my demographic, African Americans, so-called agreeing with Nazis in some instances, mainly because they said African Americans should get reservations and gratuity off of being brung from their country, right? That nigga turning or like what? And I'm thinking, because I think that's the reason we have so much war and fighting, because an individual that you don't really agree with says one good thing that you super duper agree on, so you're on their side completely. Now, I could say we should find a way to cure world hunger. I have to cure the world hunger. But in that process, we have to kill millions of people that are hoarding the food. It might seem right in the instance, but that's why peace is, it's not non-existence, but it's a harder thing to find. Honestly, it's a harder thing to find. I want to do more studies on these world leaders that caused so much pain and what their mindset was. Not to agree with them, but to understand what made them want to be a dictator in the first place. You know, but it makes no sense to agree with them because they have one good political view on a demographic that fits your ideas or your ideologies. Because if that was the case, that means anybody could be a politician and say one great thing, but the rest around it is bad. There's no such thing as just good and bad. Well, in some instances, yeah, maybe, but off of that, I don't think so. I think, I just think me, me trying to redeem myself of how I used to think really puts in the terms of why so many people have done the things that they've done. I hold no hatred in my heart, but I don't want to be just a peaceful man that turns the other cheek anytime adversity comes around. No, but if I have to be hated to create peace for all, then so be it. But I won't pick and choose. I will hold every side of the story, no matter how tedious or no matter how crazy it is. Statements are ubiquitous around the world. You gotta believe what caused the most evil man to turn evil. Mm. The most evil man wasn't always evil, they say, right? And I guess the reason they say that, they try to use biblical terms to excuse the things that are unexplainable. You know, don't go around here disrespecting somebody's religion because you lost an individual and they say God had a plan for them. Believe in your God and your God only. I know it's hard. It is hard to live in this world, to figure out how to use your moral compass in the correct way without offending anybody and truly seeing the way it is. And I think that's why people resort to religions, cultists, or just straight science. There can be otherworldly things. Some way or another, there are otherworldly things. Yeah, sure. Eternal, why does that? But I want to do more studies to understand these so-called humans. But honestly, I think there are demonic things among us that so-called dress themselves as humans. Hanging another individual based off their skin color they cannot control, feeding their families, killing their families, burning their communities, feeding their babies to alligators, using their skin as fur, brandishing them, using them as property. It's the most demonic thing I have ever seen. You can ask for forgiveness for your God, but do you forgive the people who have done you wrong? But I think mainly because, well, you weren't there to experience that pain, so why should I feel sorry? it's a hard thing to wade through life. But I always want to say my mind is ageless. My mind is always able to consume and be malleable like clay, because the one thing I would never do is pick one side, because they have my ideologies in some manner or way. It's either 100% or none. Oh, what's that anime? Attack on Titans. Aaron. Some people say he was just. Some people say he was not just. To see your, I think some people don't really grasp what the writer of the show, well, of the anime, was trying to purvey. Maybe I got it incorrect too, but in some way, some people say Aaron was just mainly off the fact because his people has been done wrong so many times, and so excruciating and unexplainable ways have been eaten, tarnished, branded, used as guinea pigs, killed. His own mother has been eaten by a titan. So I think people say, well, they had what they had coming, you know, good karma or bad. Don't take this video as, oh, he agrees with one fascism or another. I don't. But some of the most greatest people have died for speaking their piece. And I don't think I don't want that to be me. I don't I would die for the things that I believe in. I would die for freedom. I would die for liberty, but I don't want to die and be forsaken and my words have been misheard. I will never try to dial back on what I say. I truly believe humans can evolve to a way where violence is not needed in some instances. But I do think fighting is another word of speaking. Fighting is another way of language. Sometimes your fist can have a conversation that words cannot convey. I know it sounds crazy, but I want to cut this video. I'm not going to edit it or anything, but if you mistake my words for hate or me trying to indoctrinate you to be on my side for the wrong reasons, please don't. I'm just trying to convey that we should just be able to adapt and learn of why these evil people became evil and why some people choose the way of this. As I said, humans are the most contradictory things in the world. We shall never understand them fully. The human mind and the oceans are the most vastest things we do not understand. So believe me, I hold no hatred, but I try to understand what will be next. Just know, I try. And I'll catch you in the next time, I guess.